So this is going to be a new series for my YouTube channel. I've been going back and forth between launching a podcast and or not, and it's just really kind of hard for me to start a new project with that, how many projects I have going on. But I also want to make space for some series to live a little bit longer than they do on Instagram Live and things like that. So since I already make a lot of videos for all of my courses and whatnot, I thought I would just stick to YouTube as the thing that I already know, and to be able to make things live a little bit longer. So that's what I'm going to do. And my first episode in my little series is going to be my story. My story in burnout, my story as a BCBA, my story as an entrepreneur, my story as mom, my story with mental health. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So if that's interesting to you, hi, I'm Mallory. I am a board certified behavior analyst, which means BCBA. I'm going to use that acronym a lot. Probably if you're watching this, you're one too. And I am an expert in acceptance and commitment therapy. I have over 150 CEUs. I have a really large, very well-read library. And I've had specifics, supervision around this topic, and its application. I've got a book out that's for, helping parents and being able to help parents of kiddos in ABA. And I just want to talk about how I got to this place where I'm no longer in agency life. I work for myself, and I'm kind of like a coach mentor in acceptance and commitment therapy. I'm an author, I'm a speaker. And a lot of people are interested in how I got to this place, usually because they're dissatisfied with where they're at in their career as a BCBA, because it feels so limiting sometimes, being a BCBA, because we're so cornered on autism, right? And now with the way that things are in this current climate, as I record this in 2022, in November, almost the end of 2022, there's a lot going on right now around autism, and a lot of BCBAs don't want to be in autism. So to tell you my story, I'm going to have to go back in time to when I was finishing up grad school and passing my certification test, right? So this is back in 2012. Oh, sorry. I passed in 2013, January 2013, and I graduated in 2012. I didn't pass the first time. So if you didn't pass the first time, don't worry, it's okay. Or if you're moving towards your test, don't worry. It's very common to not pass the first time. It doesn't mean anything. It's just test taking skills. I was in a really challenging place in my life, right? When you're in academics, you bust your ass. And I'm a first-time graduate in my family. Other people in my family haven't graduated. And I'm the first one, especially for graduate school. And in order to make that happen, I was working like 3 jobs. I did the intensive program. So I had to do 5 classes in addition to 20 hours a week of direct. This was a different time, right? The way that the hours broke down was a little bit different, but it wasn't the only job that I had. And in order to live. And that was really exhausting. That was really exhausting. And I had no bandwidth for that. At the same time, I was also getting married, which is wonderful. I'm still with my husband, who was my partner then, and we met in college. So we continued dating through college and into undergrad. We were getting into grad, and then we were getting married. And getting married and losing my grandmother, who was like a mother to me, and doing grad school at that intensity, it was scary. I ended up in some psych clinics, right? Not an inpatient, but I was threatened to have a slipper vacation a couple times. By the time I got myself promoted at the agency that I was working at, long term, I was on a lot of drugs in order to like live life, right? Prescribed ones, and I had, by a psychiatrist and a psychologist. But the real problem that I'm trying to get here is that I wasn't able to ABA my way out of that, And what was really interesting was that I took that as meaning I was bad at being a BCBA, right? Because in graduate school, especially during this time, I don't know if it's true now, but we were kind of taught that ABA is going to save the world, right? Like it's the best thing that's ever been. And it's got all of the data driven and it does all these wonderful things and blah, 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 right? And so here I was, miserable, absolutely over the top, burnt out. And I was just starting my career. Going into the job for the first time, which is completely overwhelming. Burnt out already. Burnt out from school. And then I was interacting with that job from that place of not just burnout, but also like mental health challenges. And I couldn't ABA my way out of it. So what ended up happening is I got a really wonderful psychologist who was very well versed in DBT, not ACT, okay, DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and which was wonderful, an absolute blessing, because it's really the same language as ACT if you just look for the synonyms, right? So what she ended up doing was kind of together we found ACT, and it was like our bridge of being able to talk to one another. So she would talk to me in DBT, right, which is all this mentalistic language, and I would talk to her in ABA, and then we would meet in the middle in ACT, and we kind of learned it together. And we ended up using that bridge between her DBT and my ABA in ACT to be the thing that helped me, right? So for me, it's very applicable in behavioral terms, right? When we think about what we're feeling, and we reach for the idea that there's more thoughts available to us. So which one do I want to apply? It's a replacement behavior, right? And the one that has been shaped up over time, the uncomfortable one, the first thought that my brain goes to, which is probably like, I'm bad, or I'm a POS, or, things aren't working out for me, or I'm the worst, or whatever it is just, and it's intermittently reinforced, which is really hard to break, right? And so instead I can reach for almost, it's not discrete trial training style, because it's not discrete, but in that like trial trainings of every time I can notice that I'm having the thought, I can practice replacing it with this other thought and practice feeling it at the same time. It's replacement behavior. And over time, I can shape that up. But of course, there's going to be spontaneous recovery, right? And I speak about it in ABA language because that's my frame. But I'm using stuff that's happening inside my head that maybe not everybody can see, but that when I attend to it, right, I am changing the way that I relate to my environment. And that is what allowed me to switch around my major depressive disorder, switch around my generalized anxiety disorder, switch around my panic disorder, right? All with really strong psychosomatic symptoms, right? Like I was throwing up a lot. I was falling over from vertigo a lot. I was constantly dizzy. I was constantly having blurry vision for no medical reason other than I was stressed and overwhelmed. And this is how my body was dealing with it. So as I started to do that amazing work, I was like, I can't keep this to myself. Like, I have to learn more. So I ended up going to a lot of CEU workshops. This was pre-COVID. I also had my first child, my son, during that time. And as I was learning all about ACT and allowing it to transform my life, and starting to think about how I was going to use it with my clients, I had a niche of teens, which was very applicable because they all had, kind of anxiety or social anxiety or depression symptoms, things like that. I was seeing for the first time as a mom how different parenting was than I guess I expected it to be. And how some of the ways that maybe I was taught to interact with parents, or shaped up, or like that I just did, right, was not helpful as a parent now. And so I was looking at some of the ways that we did things, and I was like, I don't like this at all. So I started to really think about how I was going to apply ACT to parent support, because one thing now that really grinds my gears is when people complain about parents. In the stance of ABA, which is why I have that book. Because when we start thinking about that, right, those are whole people with whole lives and whole problems that aren't just the kid. Like that hyper awareness to the child is just something that was really challenging for me as someone with postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, right? It can't be all about the child. We also have to be able to focus on treating the parent like a whole person. And ABA just doesn't do that. ABA within the scope of autism, they don't do it. They just don't do it. And they don't do it because it goes into private events. It also goes, there's other reasons around insurance and coverage and things like that. But mostly if people thought that they could do it, they would, right? So how can we use this amazing mindfulness strategy that is behavioral in nature with these parents? And so I started to kind of take on the cases that people were frustrated with in my agency, or at least the parents, and be able to start talking with them. And then I was able to have some really interesting changes that would happen there. And it was really cool. And at the same time as I was doing that, and moving my kiddos around, I ended up getting pregnant with my second child. And when I came back from mat leave there, right, I had a child with some health conditions. It was really hard. So again, it was even harder. And I needed to lean into that parent support stuff even more. While I was still in my own recovery and still using ACT in my own recovery. And so it became the thing that I couldn't separate myself from, acceptance and commitment therapy and its strategies. And that was while I was developing a very large library and something I couldn't stop reading about, and I couldn't stop asking about, and I couldn't stop talking about. But I was also in an agency where I was kind of met with opposition at that time. It really wasn't 100%. They weren't comfortable with it. They weren't necessarily comfortable with the references I was providing. I have to say I'm really bad at providing references. I'm really good at the top-down stuff and being able to take things and apply them, but I don't always 100% cite everything exactly correctly. And that was really uncomfortable to the agency I was working with. So when COVID started, and I was so burnt out from the beginning, like I said, and I've been spinning my wheels, moving in this direction of something I was really excited about, but my employer wasn't really excited about. And they really wanted me to just do the job that I said I would do, which was work with the kids. And here I am, the only thing I can think about and the only thing I can dabble in is all of this other stuff that wasn't the meat of my job. And I didn't want to go back to that job. I couldn't do it anymore. And I had barely even, at this point, I had been in it for a really long time. So I can't say I barely got into it, but I feel like because I was so burnt out from the beginning, before I even got started in it, I never got to decide if I actually liked working with the kiddos, because it was all I had ever known. And that's a whole nother episode here. But to wrap up this one, right? What ended up happening is I had to leave that job and take care of my daughter because I couldn't expose her to COVID. She was, was kind of told like there would be she would die. The doctor said if she got COVID. So I couldn't work with the vulnerable population any longer face to face. And I, made online work for a while. But what I'm getting at was that as I started leaning into ACT real hard, what was it that I really cared about? It was ACT. It wasn't just ASD work. It was disseminating, teaching, and sharing this life-saving, behavioral-based, data-driven process that I have become very intimately aware of and had lots of wonderful opportunities to support people in. And that's what I had to do. So I quit. I wrote my book, which was the process of helping the parents from the context of where I had it. And I started a business. I had no idea if it was going to work. In fact, I had to make it work because at that point, the money wasn't like my money really mattered. And so giving up a salary, like hourly work that was really good, and that's always been the only thing that I ever had, was terrifying. But it was also the only thing that my values could demand of me. And one thing that I could rely on was that I could always get another job, but also that when I've put my mind to something, I've always made it work. And that I quit my job in January of 2021. And in January of 2021, I got my first kind of high ticket client, and I was on a roll. And since then, because it had to work and I got so clear about what it is that I wanted to do, which was help people be able to find ACT, right? And I specifically I didn't want to work with BCBAs because I had kind of a negative connotation with them. And I still meet a lot of BCBAs who I wouldn't want to hang out with. But BCBAs are people who want to help others and they want to be a part of others. They want to, they value being of service to people. That's why they get burnt out. That's why they get overwhelmed. But that's also why they're in this field. And it's helping the helpers is the thing that I want to do. I want to disseminate acceptance and commitment therapy to the people who could use it really powerfully the way that I've experienced it, because I believe in it as someone who's used it. I believe in it as someone who's walked people through it. And I believe in it because of all of the science that backs it up. I might not be a very research-oriented person, but I'm very well read. And there's a lot of science out there to prove that this is it. Like this is it might not be the only way, but it is a way to being able to help people live a life that they truly care about. And when I decided that it was no longer going to be just a theory for me, it was going to be the way that I lived. And it was, it was wonderful because the first time I got to meet Stephen Hayes at a boot camp, he said, you can't do ACT to people. You have to do it with them. And so the magic of ACT is in the experience of it. And it hits different when you help someone from a place of knowing how hard it is to do it. But it also is so much more supportive. And it becomes you holding their hand as we go through this together, rather than you telling them something to do. And it's no longer prescriptive. And there's a slight shift in how that feels. And sometimes BCBAs don't really understand the difference because from a logical standpoint, that shouldn't be different. But when we talk to the person underneath the BCBA, they all get it, and that's the point. That's the point where I couldn't BCBA my way out of my depression because it wasn't taking that stuff into consideration. And ACT does. It really, truly does. So my hope with this series is to be able to continue that mission and to be able to help people see how ACT works. And that's the whole point of my business, is to be able to give people different opportunities to be able to start feeling the magic of ACT, right? Be able to experience it for themselves. I'm not here to teach you theory, although I do have some free videos on theory. I'm not because I think it's important. You need to get it too. I'm not here to only think about how we're going to apply it to ASD kiddos. I'm not here to only think about how we're going to apply it to parents. But those are ways that I am going to offer you a road in. My main objective here is for you to feel the experience of ACT for whatever matters to you, whatever's worth the acceptance of the pain that life throws at us, whatever's worth it to you. I want to find the door that you are going to be able to open and be able to walk through so that you can get it the way that I get it. Because when you get it, and when you, then you're going to take it and you're going to do it with other people. You're going to catch it the way that I did, get more CEUs, get more supervision, get more books, learn and grow. Maybe you're a research-oriented person and you do some more research to help people learn more about how we can apply this differently, right? When you get it, you're going to take it and run with it. And that's the impact that I want to make here, right? I've got a lot of different ways to do that. In January, we're going to be launching a completely different way. So instead of cohorts, we're going to be continuous rolling enrollment. So that way I can help even more people and increase that impact. And of course, the one-to-one spots where tailored supervision, consultation, coaching, mentorship is going to happen. But I'm hoping to also lean into this series to be able to give more tangible strategies in bite-sized pieces, hopefully not as long as this one. This is the first one, so it's a little bit longer, but in short bite-sized pieces where, 10 to 15 minutes, where maybe we can take something and run with it and think about it as you go out into your world. So that's my story. That's my mission. That's my purpose. That's what I want to do here. And if you want to come along for the ride, go ahead and give this a thumbs up, subscribe, share this with somebody who might benefit from it, and go ahead and follow me on, YouTube here and my Instagram at Mindfully Mallory. That's where I'm most active. It's on my Instagram, so go check that out if you didn't come here from there. And I will see you soon with the next episode. All right.